somebody like myself or an artist recognizes, I'm in that burnout cycle. That's what's going on. How do they jump out of it? What can they be doing to help regulate? Like, is it like nervous system regulation techniques? Like, what would you advise?
Yeah. So, in order to kind of get out of it, we need to recognize we're in it, first of all. So going, oh, this is what I do. I do the thing where I overcommit to lots of stuff, and then it's really fun for a while, and then I totally fry myself, and then these are the symptoms, and then this is what happens, and then these are the results of that, and then I crash, or I end up having to cancel a bunch of things, and I suffer financially, like kind of seeing how that cycle looks is important to then go, I don't want to do that anymore. How do I get out of that? So
okay, I'm excited to have Marnie Warner on the show today, and she is a health coach that really is focusing on helping artists navigate the struggles, whether that's mental health and physical health too. And this is a topic that I think so many people need to be having in our industry, and especially artists amongst themselves as peers should probably be talking about a lot. Marnie, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. I mean, all humans go through mental health hurdles, right? And I think more so creatives go through these hurdles. So let's kind of like jump into it and talk about what these hurdles look like and how to navigate them when they come up. I saw you posted something somewhere, and it was about the burnout cycle. And I can totally, as a business owner, somebody who's worked in the music industry for a decade and a half, like I'm very familiar with burnout. Definitely in the cycle. Have I ever jumped out of the cycle? Probably not. Do you want to kind of talk about the burnout cycle, what that looks like, and how to navigate it?
Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, the burnout cycle really is, we're doing what we're doing. We get overloaded in whatever way, we take on too much work, or, we can burn out in many different ways in many different sectors of our lives. But if we're talking about work, maybe things get really busy. Maybe we're tackling a big project. Maybe it's a tour. Maybe we're just overloaded with the things that come along with what we do. And then we go through a period where we feel the effects of burnout, right? Whether that's overwhelm, whether there's a whole bunch of different symptoms that come along with burnout. But usually there's some kind of sense of overwhelm, overstimulation, and really just kind of like a bottoming out of our mental, emotional, and physical health. So what usually happens then is we are forced to take a break, or we know we should take a break, or the intense thing ends, whether it is a tour or a big project or something like that. And then we usually maybe will get sick, or, people are always like, why do I get sick when I go on vacation after I've been working really hard? Because our body's like, huh. So then we take that break, we feel okay again, and then we usually start that cycle all over again. So I liken it to, if you were, instead of detoxing throughout your life every day just by doing regular things like eating healthy and exercising and drinking water, if you were to eat fast food for a month and then do like a juice cleanse for a week and feel better, and then just starting eating fast food again. So it's kind of that's like,
what's a good way that artists can what are some symptoms of recognizing that you're in the cycle, and maybe which part of the cycle you're in, and then how do we get out of that hamster wheel preemptively, not confusing with, we have a little downtime, it's a break, but we're going to rejuvenate, and then just jump right back into doing the same bad habits that got us there in the first place. Do you have any tips on how to navigate that?
Yeah, I mean, the first step really is to kind of notice what your symptoms of burnout is, and how burnout shows up for you, so that you can start recognizing it before you're in full on burnout. There's so many stages of burnout. There's acute stress, and then there's acute episodic stress, and then there's chronic stress, and that really is what snowballs into burnout. And that could be stress in our whole lives, or it could be stress in a portion of our life. So once you start recognizing what burnout starts to look like for you, is when you can start recognizing that earlier, and doing something about it. So whether it's feeling really apathetic about things, nothing matters, why should I bother? Not getting joy from things that usually bring you joy, whether it's your work or your family, or, things that you do for fun. Feeling really fatigued, like not just tired, but 360 fatigued, all elements of your life. It's just, you don't have the energy for anything. feeling really wired. So you could feel really tired, but you could also feel really wired, anxious, irritable, hypersensitive. So all of these things are different ways that burnout can show up for us. And once we recognize what that looks like, how it feels, and even the ways that we burn out, which is a little bit of a whole different topic, but, recognizing, oh, I'm doing that again. I'm doing the thing where I keep working no matter what. I keep taking on stuff, even though I know I'm at capacity. So the earlier we can know what it looks like and how we're doing it, we can start fixing it. So it really starts with the awareness of that.
Yeah. I feel like everything you said, I just checked the box off on. Like, okay, yeah, that sounds like me. That sounds like me. Oh, there I am again. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Juggling a family with two little kids, a 6-year-old and a 2-year-old, running a business, working in the music industry with artists, which is a very labor-intensive industry, right? Like we're trying to elevate artists and keep them elevated, and sustain a career. So it does feel like nonstop. Let's say somebody like myself or an artist recognizes, I'm in that burnout cycle. That's what's going on. How do they jump out of it? What can they be doing to help regulate? Like, is it like nervous system regulation techniques? Like, what would you advise?
Yeah. So, in order to kind of get out of it, we need to recognize we're in it, first of all. So going, oh, this is what I do. I do the thing where I overcommit to lots of stuff, and then it's really fun for a while, and then I totally fry myself, and then these are the symptoms, and then this is what happens, and then these are the results of that, and then I crash, or I end up having to cancel a bunch of things, and I suffer financial, kind of seeing how that cycle looks is important to then go, I don't want to do that anymore. How do I get out of that? So like I said, first, when you recognize what the symptoms are of getting in there, then you can start going, wait a minute. I know where I'm heading to this. I'm overloading myself. I need to look at everything that's on my plate right now. And even if I can't take something off, because like you said, this industry is very all consuming. It requires a lot of us. So we can't always not do something. But because, it's taxing. Sometimes we just have to figure out, like I talk about this a lot as almost like a mixing board where, some days something has to come down. We can't do every single thing all the way up every single day. On a mixing board, it's going to sound terrible. And in our life, it doesn't end well. So, kind of recalibrating every day of like, okay, kids kept me up last night. I didn't get great sleep. What can I do today? Or, I can't do.
Are you reading my mind? That literally has been my week. Like, I'm not getting sleep because the 2-year-old is having a sleep regression.
Oh my God,
weird.
that's
yeah.
I don't even have kids. I think it's just kind of in my brain of what some of my clients are going through.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I love that
really
kind of
funny.
visual of. I love the visual of the mixing board and adjusting accordingly. You can't have everything full blast because it's going to sound terrible.
Yeah.
That is your life situation if you're running everything full blast. Yeah. So I didn't mean to cut you off, but I was really tripped out. I'm like, wait a second. Did I already tell you about this?
That's
sorry,
really funny.
I'll let you continue.
No, all good. That's I love when that happens. I'm like, wait, how do you know? Because I've been there, maybe not in that particular situation, but in kind of trying to do all the things all the time. We can't. And that's not the general vibe we get from the world around us. We think that somehow other people have figured out how to do all the things all the time, and it doesn't end up well. Even if they are at some point, it's not sustainable. So my whole goal is to help people, build these lives that are sustainable. So yeah, to your point, it is all of those things you named, the nervous system regulation things, all the techniques that we can incorporate. So once we understand how the burnout shows up for us, what it looks like and feels like in our body, emotionally, mentally, physically, we can start implementing techniques into our daily lives that are just, part of how we do things, right? So it doesn't feel like a chore. It's not an extra thing that we need to do. It's just, it's integrated in so that it helps us maintain, so that we are constantly diffusing that stuff, because we're going to be stressed out. We're going to be overwhelmed. We're going to be overloaded with stuff. We can't stop that, but we can help our bodies process that a little better. And there's a million ways that we can talk about, a bunch of them today. But yes, it is usually starting with some sort of nervous system regulation technique that works for the individual. We're all very different.
Yeah. So if I'm following you, kind of like the way to be proactive about it is to implement proactively some of these techniques, right, into your kind of daily habits. What would be maybe your top three that don't feel like heavy lifting, that can easily be slid into a daily routine to kind of help give some maintenance overall?
Yeah. So one of them is breath work. I think it's, it kind of is made into this whole thing where I have to sit, like meditation too, which is also another bit like, I have to have a special room for my breath work and I have to have a special cushion and an hour to free, and it can be a minute. One of my favorite breath work exercises is literally a minute long. It's called 4-7-8 breathing, where I have a link on my site in my blog to how to do it because it's one of my favorites and I talk about it all the time. But you're essentially breathing in through your nose for 4 counts, holding for 7 counts, and exhaling through your mouth for 8 counts. And you're doing that in 4 rounds at a time. The reason it's so effective is because when we exhale for twice as long as we inhale, it's a signal to our body that we're safe. So it activates the parasympathetic nervous system. It kicks us into rest and digest from fight, flight, or freeze or fawn, and we are able to actually be in our bodies. So that's one of my favorites because it's so quick and we can do it anytime. That said, breath work is not, some people have a hard time with breath work. It feels more stressful because telling somebody to take a deep breath, if they're already in a very heightened state, for some of us that feels good, for some of us that feels hard. And what I usually tell people that if it feels hard, I'm just saying this in case anyone's listening and they're like, breath work stresses me out. It's really hard for me to do that, especially when I'm in a state of panic. If that's the case, A, there's other stuff that you can do. But B, try to start with the exhale, because that is a way that we have to inhale after we exhale, right? But if you start with the exhale, which is actually the relaxing part of it, that sometimes just kind of kickstarts a little bit of a good response there.
Yeah, that makes total sense. As you're talking about breath work, I'm like trying to slow my breathing while you're talking. Take a breath.
Being conscious of your breath is helpful, because we're usually just going, and then you're like, wait, when's the last time I took a deep breath?
Yeah, I know. That's exactly what I was thinking when you were talking about it. Like the music industry, I feel like the music industry is one of the toughest, hardest industries around, to navigate and thrive in. When I think, I'm curious, tell me if I'm wrong or if I'm on the right track with this. I feel like a lot of high achievers, sometimes the catalyst is maybe some trauma that happened early in their life. It set them on the path to where they think they have to be this high achiever and they have to go after validation and things like that, right? Am I on the right track with that thinking, or is that totally incorrect?
I think that could be, that definitely could be a catalyst. I think people get into this industry and do different things for different reasons. We all have a need to feel safe in some way. So whatever that looks like for us, whether that's, creating something that feels like it's helping us process our feelings, or whether that's being with other people or connecting with other people. If this is a medium that helps us connect with other people and that helps us feel safe, then it could be part of that. So it could be from a trauma, but it also could be because, it could be, lowercase t trauma too. Just, things that happen when we were younger and we have a need to connect or be a part of something in a different way. There's a million different reasons, but certainly that could be one of them. Yeah.
I've seen, just from my experience of working in the industry, I feel like I've seen a lot of artists kind of on their journey get stuck because they start chasing validation from the industry, and they kind of like forget about all the current fans that got them to where they are, and they forgot to nurture those. Let's talk a little bit about validation on that track, and like, should artists be hyper sensitive to the fact that they might be doing that, chasing industry validation? I mean, you do want a couple key players on your team and stuff like that, but becoming obsessed is kind of, I think, might be leading you into that burnout hamster wheel. Have you seen anything about seeking validation with artists and kind of that process?
Yeah, and it's hard because this industry for artists and also on the industry side, to some extent, is based on, are you accepted into whatever it is, right? Are you anointed as such to be, on this tour, on this festival, on this label, in this studio with this producer, right? There's a lot of things that seem outside the control of the artist. I need a manager, I need a booking. Like I can't some artists do successfully do things themselves, but they still need, the person on the other end to accept the thing. I mean, publicity, right? Like there's only so much you can do when you're sending out emails to people. The other person on the other end has to open the email, like the thing, and say, yes, I will write about this, right? And so that's one thing. Okay, they validated me. So I think the separation comes when you can let go a little bit of the outcome, which is really hard when the outcome is, you're kind of tied to this. I am in this because I want to be successful. What does success mean? Okay, success means I'm going to be on this festival, or I'm going to tour with this artist, or I'm going to headline this venue, or, whatever it is. I need to do a certain amount of things to get to that point, and those things involve other people. So it's a bigger conversation about mindset transformation, but it really is like work needs to be done individually on kind of how you take action to set yourself up for success and get the things that you need to get throughout your career while not relying on that validation or like you said, becoming obsessed with it, because then you're putting kind of your self-trust outside yourself, and it's sort of like, am I a good person? Am I a good artist? Am I good enough? I'm going to leave that up to somebody else to decide. And once we do that, that's a slippery slope to us, kind of not trusting our own self anymore.
Yeah.
That's
and also,
a whole other.
yeah. And also diluting the creativity a little bit too. Cause then you start manufacturing your music to try to please whoever you're trying to get that validation from. So it's not being a genuine byproduct of your creativity anymore. You've kind of diluted it. Kind of on the same thought, and talking about mindset, let's talk a little bit about imposter syndrome. Like that is something that even I deal with on the industry side. And I've been doing, like I said, a decade and a half working with icons. I've gotten the validation because the icons have hired me. Like, you know what I mean? But I still have it. Some days I'll be like, I don't know what the hell I'm doing. Like what? Nobody believes that I know what I'm talking about, And then when it comes to artists dealing with imposter syndrome, like what are some techniques they can kind of like get under the hood and look at and maybe put to work that might help them overcome a little bit of that imposter syndrome, which I think is becoming even more prevalent because of social media, kind of like comparing yourself to all these other quote unquote successful artists that you're trying to get on pace with.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's rampant, right? We all experience imposter syndrome at some point in our lives, if not every day, right? Because there's always something that that little voice that creeps in going, who do you think you are to do this? Like, how do you,
And who is that voice, by the way?
Yeah, that voice is a powerful force, right? I like to think about it and talk to my clients about it like it's another part of our brain, because it's in our brain, but if we think about it like this little monster, right? Some clients that call it the gremlin, right? It sneaks in, and it's a story that we've been telling ourselves for a long time. I mean, it's the ego. It's this part of our brain. Our brains are there to protect us. Our brains are there not to help us succeed, not to help us thrive, but to help us survive. That's the whole purpose of our brain, really. In charge of every system in our body going, let's keep you alive for another day. And so if we're about to do something that feels scary, like trying to sign on a big artist to our company, or, go on a big tour or whatever it is, a lot of things in this industry can feel like leaps. Oh my God, who am I? There's that voice is really just your brain trying to keep you safe of, don't do that. You'll fail. And we can't handle that. So, there's the kind of self-critic that it comes up in different ways for different people, but sometimes that manifests as, you can't do that. You're not going to, who do you think you are? You've been doing this for 15 years, but you actually don't know what you're doing, and everyone's going to find out. or like, not this time, buddy. This is the one where you just fall flat, or no one's gonna. So this little kind of voice needs to be spoken to. And so one of the ways that I work with clients on this is kind of first the awareness, right? It always comes back to the awareness of recognizing that little voice. And instead of trying to squash it or push it away, which only will make it stronger, as I'm sure that you've experienced, I know I have. It's like, well, now it's screaming at me, so it must be right, is have a conversation with it, and this is like regular, a routine, regular practice that you can do of like, okay, I see what you're trying to do. You're just overreacting. It's almost like a child being like, can't tell me what to do. It's like, I'm in charge. I got this. I know you're scared and you're just kind of reacting like this because you're scared, but trust me on this. I got this. And it takes a long time, to kind of get to that point where you're having this conversation, seamlessly, but it's really helpful in this process to kind of go like, I don't believe you. Thanks for sharing. This isn't helpful.
Yeah. I literally just saw a clip on TikTok like 2 days ago. It was Sia, and somebody asked her like what are your biggest like transformative moments in mental health, or something like that, right? And she talked about mirror practice, which is like find all the negative things that you're telling yourself, flip them to a positive, and then say them to yourself every day in a mirror for like every day for a month, and then slowly you start rewiring that story that you're telling yourself.
Yeah.
Which I feel is on par with everything we're talking about here. And it's just weird that I saw that on TikTok the other day.
It's true. It's like that affirmation and that kind of repetition of that. So there's so many different ways to do it. And it's really kind of about finding the thing that feels good to you. Because if you're trying something like, I don't buy this is BS, then you're not going to keep doing it. But if it's like, ooh, that mirror thing works. that feels good. I can, hook into that.
Yeah, I need to do the mirror thing, to be honest. Like, I need to get in front of the mirror.
We could all use to do the mirror thing. Yeah, it's super helpful. There's so many different techniques for that. And it's just, it really is kind of first, like what she was saying, essentially like hearing yourself say all these negative things, like you can't do this, you're too that, you're too whatever. And it's just like, if we spend another 20, 30, 40, 50 years just believing that and not stopping to be like, is that actually right? Then we're not even aware of it to change it. But once we're aware of it enough to change it, then we can start doing whatever it is that we need to do. But it's that first step is going, wait a minute, I've been telling myself this story for a really long time. Is that true?
Yeah. Right. And then I think things that hold people back generally, and this is just a general statement, is like the three things of like, is it fear of failure, fear of success, or fear of judgment? Right. And I feel like that is something, the fear of judgment is something that really holds a lot of artists back, especially in these modern times with social media. And that is one of your biggest tools to utilize to get awareness and generate fans. You got to play the social media game. But on the other side of that token, if you want to be successful at it, I think as an artist, you need to be super vulnerable. That way you can really connect with other people and they can relate to you on that deeper level. So it's not just surface level music connection. But then that's where that fear of judgment, I think, creeps in for a lot of artists. Do you know of any practical ways that an artist can navigate that fear of judgment of like, they just made this piece of content, or they're being super vulnerable, or they're sharing something and they're like, oh, they're already imagining what the comments are looking like, and they don't ever post it and they don't get there? Do you have any tools of like navigating those moments?
Yeah. So it's the same thing when you're making anything, right? And putting anything out in the world, a song, a piece of art, anything. It's like, as soon as it's out there, right? And people are going to like it, judge it, whatever, misinterpret it. There's all these things that can happen when something is out there. It's a little bit of a deeper thing when it's something that you're saying, because a song, could be autobiographical or not, nobody really knows unless you say. So social media is this whole other beast, because now we have this direct channel to our fans and not fans, anyone that wants to be judgmental, to say what we want to say that is literally something coming from us. So I would say the biggest piece of advice I give to artists around that, and this also comes from me running digital marketing agency for, over a decade, and working with artists on doing their social media in a non-scary way, because this all ties in, mental health, social media, it's all very tightly wound together. But it's being really clear with yourself on how deep do you want to let people in. So yes, I want to be vulnerable. Yes, I want to connect to people. Yes, I want to be, my authentic self, and I want to say all the things and do all the things and show up in a way that I'm connecting with people. And how deeply do I let people in? To what do I need to protect? But where does it feel good, unsafe? Like how far? It's almost like, there's layers to our skin, right? How many layers do I want to share before it starts to feel uncomfortable, not in a I have to do this kind of way, but in like a I don't know if I can, and it might, if you are challenging yourself in that, it might be starting with, kind of the outer layers and moving in a little bit and seeing how, testing it out. But at some point, I think there is, we kind of have to figure out what that line is between like letting people in and protecting some pieces. And if you're willing to and you want to, and it feels good to let people kind of all the way in and be very vulnerable about that, there has to be some work done on letting go of what people's interpretations of that and reactions are going to be, because we can't control that, and as soon as we try to, I gave a workshop on uncertainty recently, and it's just like the more we look for certainty and the more we look for, things that are a sure thing or the actual thing that we want to happen, the more anxiety that produces. So if we're going the opposite and just accepting that we don't have control over some things and looking for the learning opportunities and things in there, at least we'll be less anxious about it. But I think the process is just kind of figuring out where's that line in between public me and private me, if that makes sense.
It makes total sense. I'm just reflecting on so many conversations I've had even this year with artists that all this information, everything you're saying can apply to them and be super helpful. I have one more question, but before I do that, because I don't want to forget, where should people go? Where should artists, industry professionals, X, Y, and Z go to connect with you, to coach with you? Where should they go?
Yeah, it's just my name everywhere. So Marni, Marni, Wandner, Wandner, on Instagram, and then .com. Yeah, and awesome. Feel free to
easy
shoot
enough.
Me a note. Yeah, it's pretty easy. Yeah, except for the spelling of my last name, which has always been tricky.
Well, I got one of those last names that can be pronounced a couple different ways, So I think this conversation is like very prescriptive, and I think that it can definitely help so many artists. So any artist listening to this and you related to something that was discussed here, there's a good likelihood that there's another artist that that you're friends with that is experiencing one or multiple of these things we're talking about. So please share it with them, because I think this is all topics that everybody needs to be discussing and working through. So my last question I just want to touch on with you, and I think it might call back to some of the earlier things you were discussing in terms of technique with breathing and things like that. Let's say an artist is, from the jump, they're always getting stage fright. Or maybe it's something new that's come up for them where all of a sudden, like, it hasn't been a problem and now it's a problem. Every time I go on stage, I'm just overwhelmed with stage fright. What would be something you would tell these artists in those situations?
Yeah, that's something that comes up quite a bit. And yes, sometimes it's always been the case. I mean, even when you hear stories, about some of the biggest artists in the world, they still experience it. And then sometimes it's like, wait a minute, this didn't used to happen. What's going on now? So one of the things that I will say is to try to track and pay attention to what led up to that. If it doesn't happen every single time you're on stage, what was your last 24 hours like before it did happen? Because then you could start going, ooh, this is something that, you can start to see patterns. I had this thought, or I had this experience, or even I ate this way, certain things that sort of trigger an emotional response in us when it didn't used to happen. So number one, I would say that just kind of start tracking what's been going on for you before that happens. And then, start digging into once you kind of identify that, or even if you don't come up with anything, you're kind of like, I don't know, this is just sort of happening. Start doing a little digging into why do I not feel safe? because that then coming back to that, you know, a lot of the work that I do is around figuring out, helping people figure out why they feel stressed, which is why I don't feel safe. Like I equate those two together. And once we figure out, well, I feel like this is the trick that my brain is playing on me, kind of going back to what we were talking about before, right? With essentially what is an amygdala hijack, where your brain is like, you're unsafe, there's something terrible going to happen. And once you can kind of, it's a very long, there's hard to answer this in like a succinct way because there's so many different things that could be happening. But I would say number one is kind of figuring out what led up to that. So you can kind of backtrack and go, oh, this is what's going on. Maybe it's a physiological thing. Maybe it is a mental thing. Maybe it's an emotional thing. Maybe it's something that's been going on that's bubbling under the surface. But once you figure out that, and then what it is I need to feel safe and why I don't feel safe, once, you know, is it as soon as I walk out onto the stage? Does it dissipate once I start playing? Because sometimes the anticipation of the thing is worse than the actual thing, right? Being like really nervous before. But if it's more than nerves and it's like a paralyzing kind of performance anxiety, it's kind of understanding what's going on there, that there's a disconnect between where I am and my own need for safety. So it's a deeper process, but that's the kind of like first little nugget.
I love it. This whole conversation was super insightful. I appreciate you taking the time to do it, and maybe we'll do it again in the future, like a part two, and just keep drilling down on all these real things that artists and industry people. I mean, I really feel for it with the music industry because it's real, and it's advice like this and wisdom being shared that I think is the impact that we need to start having across the industry. So thanks for taking the time to do this.
Thanks for having me. Thanks for having this conversation. It's awesome to be able to talk about this.
Absolutely.